All right. So, welcome. This is Yeti Set Go, episode 5. Today, we are going to be talking about game narratives and game difficulty. Yeah. So, I don't know if anybody here has an opinion on where they want to start off on those topics, since they don't really go in together, but like they don't overcross. Like a game doesn't have to have a good or bad story and then like be hard or easy. Like those don't necessarily go together. But yeah. So I think probably the easiest place to start is game difficulty, because people usually have a really big opinion about that. I see what I did there. Thanks, Christian. So,
Wow.
well, and another, I guess, good reason to go ahead and start off with that is recently we got the announcement that everyone's favorite, most recent difficult game, or one of the most difficult games that's come out recently, Cuphead, is coming to Switch, and Sekiro just came out here last week. And I mean, From Software, famous for the get good games. So, Christian, I'm sure you're playing that already, aren't you?
No, I'm not actually. I have priorities set, so I'm not getting until the 7th because I had bills that came out first. So,
Okay. Chase, did you pick that up the other day? I know you picked up a couple games.
I did pick it up. I died before I even saw someone. It was really great.
Oh, you died to like an environmental trap?
Yeah, I died to a cliff boss.
gravity.
You had to so I've been playing a lot of The Division where like the action button is you hold down X to do something, and like in Sekiro, like you walk up and you just have to like tap it. And so like I held it and like it like triggered twice, I guess. So like I like stepped into the ledge and then very promptly fell off. So I was like, oh, okay. I've been here for all of 3 seconds and I'm dead already.
You are off to a blazing start on that. Wow.
Dude,
I
that
saw
was me with Dark Souls 2 though, so I can't fault you.
To
Yeah.
be fair, I've never actually played a Dark Souls game. This is my first like game where it's supposed to be obnoxiously hard.
Yeah.
The last game in this vein that I've played was Devil May Cry, like the original,
Oh, wow.
like many years ago.
Yeah.
And I lost to the spider boss or whatever in the first level, and I was like, okay, I'm done with this game.
Yeah. You never played Cuphead or Super Meat Boy or anything like that?
I've played Super Meat Boy.
Okay.
Like, that's like, it's punishing, but it's not like, I don't know. It's a different kind of punishing.
Yeah. Well, and actually, I think that's like a really good thing to talk about in the difficulty stuff is like there are games that are hard and designed like to be punishing, like, and make you hate life. I mean, and like, I don't know, I guess games that are hard have gotten better design over the years. I think that's pretty obvious. Like if you go back to like arcade games, if you're talking about like, you know, some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like that game that it was just like, oh, you're going to hate life and you're going to waste all your quarters and you're probably still never going to beat this game. Whereas, oh, go ahead.
There's actually a thing called Nintendo Hard, like how Mario was hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like how games were super difficult to beat because they only could fit so much game into
Right.
however many kilobytes they had. So
Right.
yeah.
So either you were going to beat it in an hour and a half and it wasn't going to be worth your money, or it had to like kick your ass for a couple weeks minimum.
Yeah.
No, I get that. I mean, because like, Chase, you've played the original Ninja Gaiden, I think you've told me, right? The NES
yes.
Ninja Gaiden? And like, did you ever beat it?
No, definitely not.
No, okay. Like,
I don't think there's a single NES game that I actually beat. Like, I mean,
really?
minus like the Mario games, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, all right.
I'm like, come on, the Mario games. But yeah, like, so we have those games where they were really punishing, you know, life systems, and like you die and okay, you start completely over. Whereas like we have now Super Meat Boy or Cuphead where it's like these smaller instances. And so it's like, okay, you lost, do it again. You lost, do it again. And like it's all little, I don't know, maximum, like with Cuphead, like probably 10-minute or so snippets. Like that's probably the longest any battle in that game is. I would venture to guess. It's been a while. But then you do have like Dark Souls, you know, or all the From Software games really, where you die and it sends you back to a spawn point. So you're not necessarily doing the exact same run again, but it's still doing this thing where it's like just beating your ass and then saying, okay, try it again right away. And you never go entirely back and like lose all your progress.
I lost like, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes worth of progress.
By diving off that cliff.
No, that was like 3 seconds, because you literally, like, after the cutscene, it's like, here's how you wall crawl, like, here's how you, like, go against what do you want to call it, a ledge, and then I fucked up the very first. Yeah, no, it's not even a wall run. It's just like you like
sidle across it, like get flat against the wall, and
whatever that term is.
I think it's sidle. I don't know for sure.
Yeah, so I lost the cliff boss immediately, and then like once I like got to the princess or whatever, the master, I got my sword, and then I died like 8 people in, and then it was like, you're back at the princess again. I was like, God damn it. I was like, I don't have time for this right now.
So here's a good question. I get the impression that we're probably all similar in this vein, but do you like a game to be really hard and kick your ass, or do you think that's like too much? Like, what's your opinion on just difficulty in games in general? And is that something that's like required for you to like a game? I'm gonna start with I was gonna say Sean, because I know he's got a pretty broad thing. He was just playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which probably isn't the hardest game in the world.
No, exactly. So I've played all of the Dark Souls games. I didn't really like Bloodborne. I don't know why. It's just, for some reason, I just didn't like it. It's quicker or something. I don't know. But I played all the Dark Souls games all the way through. So that game's hard, but it's not hard where you have to just learn the patterns of things, like just like a Super Meat Boy or a Celeste or Cuphead. Like it's all the same like premise where you have to learn the patterns, figure out what's going on, and then abuse them. But then you go to games like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which I'm actually playing through too right now. Which I actually highly recommend. A lot better than the other Assassin's Creed games. I haven't played since like 2. It's more of an open world. Yeah, it's more of an open world crazy game, but it's like they increased difficulty by upping people's health. Like Destiny was really bad about this. Like it's just everyone's a bullet or sword, whatever weapon you're using.
Damage sponge. There we go.
Damage sponge, yeah. Which that is not fun. So I always like to play games on the hard difficulty, because I usually tend to think that the developers of the games usually develop for the hard difficulty, and sometimes there's a normal, and sometimes there's one past that, and the one past that almost always has that extremely artificial damage sponge wall to it. But a game that I think that did well with this, that has that kind of like hard difficulty, was Horizon Zero Dawn. I don't know if anyone else has played that.
Yeah.
But like the game is like, it makes this enemies slightly smart. I know scaling artificial intelligence is always a hard thing to ask for, but it makes the enemies slightly smarter. It doesn't just make their vision better, which is another bullshit thing where like if you're playing a sneak game, you don't want to just have the enemies that just can see 360 around them. That's dumb as hell. But when they are smarter about what the moves they use, what they choose, and then also how much I feel like if they do more damage to you instead of you having to do more damage to them, is always a better option. And I played that on the hardest difficulty. And that was a lot of fun. Also, God of War, they kind of bullet sponge that stuff too. But like once you get your combos down or whatever, it's kind of like Dark Souls where you learn the patterns, and they did a really good job of difficulty. Like I played that one on, I don't think it was the hardest, but I played it on the hard one, so second highest. And that game was brutal, even if you were on normal mode. To even start through the first few levels was really hard to do, and they did a really good job of scaling the difficulty. They let you feel powerful, while still having the difficulty of a hard game. Like, so if I went back to an area where like I needed to just go collect something, I could just tear through the enemies,
Okay.
But they also could kill me if I fucked up. Like, like if I just messed up my like timing or I didn't use the right stuff, like they could just destroy me. And I think that's like a good difficulty balance, like where you gain these powers or skills or items, whatever you're gaining, and you can still feel powerful. But if you screw up, just like Dark Souls does well, like they're still gonna kill you. Like you can't fuck around. Dark Souls is a lot more punishing than like a God of War is, but
The
it's still
pacing's
along
also a
with
lot slower in Dark Souls.
yeah.
Like God of
But
War and Assassin's Creed, you're running across several enemies at once, like all the
yeah,
time.
yeah.
I mean, I know that happened quite a bit in like Bloodborne, where you would like run across a like pack of dudes.
Mhm.
But most of the From Software stuff, like usually you don't see any more than like 2 or 3 like at a time, right?
I mean, it depends.
Yeah, it does depend.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
if
like
you walk
as a
into a
general
room-
rule, like usually, I mean, unless you're like running into a room, like you should be
Yeah.
like taking your time and like triggering only like maybe a pack of 3 in most of the From Software games, right?
No, not
I mean,
necessarily.
it
Yeah, there's a
depends.
lot of.
But if you do it smart, like you can get away from them. You can kite. I don't know. From
Sure.
Software does a very good job with their difficulty.
Yeah.
But then once you understand it, it's also like weirdly easy. Like once you get how to play it, it's not hard at all. Whereas I think like the reason I keep bringing up God of War is because the most recent one I played is it's still hard even if you know what they're gonna do because they change it up a little bit. Like so it's a little bit of RNG, which I don't like RNG, but a little bit of it helps to like rise tension, I guess. And that's why I
Okay.
want to also kind of like you said that I don't think they're tied, but I think game narrative and tension, like game difficulty, are tied because you get this sense of tension.
Right.
That-
I mean, difficulty can definitely play into the narrative for sure.
Mhm.
Like it helps create that atmosphere. Because if something is like super easy, you don't feel like your character is actually like that strong or something, you know, because you're not
Yeah.
overcoming anything. It's like, well, yeah, if you put me up against a bunch of putties from Power Rangers, nobody gives a shit. So that's right, putties from Power Rangers, man. We all remember those. So there's a Power Ranger like fighting game came out the other day or was announced or some
Oh,
shit.
really?
Yeah.
It's like
with, like-
Battle for the Grid or something.
Yeah, I don't know what it's called, but yeah, like Goldar's in it and stuff. And I was like, oh man, that's a throwback.
Yo, what the fuck? Alright, I'm gonna have to look that up out there.
So, I've kind of got a question like expands a little bit past that. So, like, I mean, you were talking about the good balance of difficulty. How do you feel about games that just aren't hard though? Like, is that not like your jam at all? If a game's not like pushing you, do you not give any shit about it?
I mean, I talked for a long time. I will continue to talk if someone
Oh.
else doesn't have an answer.
Oh, okay. No, I have an answer. Okay.
Yeah.
So, personally, when it comes down to difficulty, I kind of like rate that higher than most stories because if a story has like, if a game has a shit story,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a pretty hard game, I'll still have something to entertain myself with. Versus if it's just easy and it has a great story, like yeah, it's awesome. But if I'm just getting through everything without having like any challenge whatsoever, I don't really care for it. Like
Okay.
if I wanted to see a story, I'd watch a movie or read a book or something
Yeah.
like that. But if I'm here to like actually have a good time and I want my ass handed to me like consistently, like that's who I am as a person. So if it has a good story, but the game isn't that difficult, I don't really care to play it. Like it's not on my list of things to do.
Right. And like I get that because I mean, having a Switch, like I'm following like big releases as they come out kind of thing, and like whenever like Kirby or Yoshi's announced, I was like, it's neat and all. I'll check out the demo, but it's not going to be hard enough to hold my attention.
Yeah.
And like while I really enjoyed Mario Odyssey a lot, like the first section of that game, like just playing through to get to the end so that you can get to like more of the moons is super easy. And it wasn't until like you get deeper into like collecting the hard ones that I enjoyed that game more. Like up to that point I'm like, oh, this level design's really good, and that was entertaining, but it wasn't as enjoyable as, later on in the game when like, okay, this is actually a little bit hard and it's gonna push me, and like that just made it so much better. Like I'm okay with games that have mixes, but I feel like if it doesn't have anything of a higher level to like push for at the end at least, then I feel like I don't know why I'm playing it at that point.
Yeah, and I can agree with that because one of my biggest things about difficulty in games in general is the difference in like an actually difficult game and false difficulty. Like the difference in Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2, because Dark Souls 2 has it's my least favorite of the Soul series because it's just filled with false difficulty where they just throw so much stuff at you that if it's a one-on-one thing, there's no chance that the enemy is going to beat you, but they throw like it's 6-on-1, and that's the only thing that makes it like you have 6 mage attacks coming at you and you can't really dodge it unless you roll at the right time and or block it. And it's just like, all right, well, anybody can press a shield like and just walk through this area and it's done. Like
Right.
it's not actually hard. It's just there's so much stuff it feels hard
Right.
versus Dark Souls 1 where even the first boss there was considered like a pretty difficult fight, like from the first boss. And one-on-one, it makes it more enjoyable. Like if you're one-on-one and losing to something versus if you're like 1-on-6 losing to something. Like you just feel like, all right, whatever. Like that makes sense. I'll just fight it one at a time and eventually get through it. It just takes longer.
Yeah. Chase, you've been pretty quiet. What are your feelings on the topic?
Well, my problem is that I don't actually play a whole lot of single player games anymore. I don't have a ton of time to dive into a lot of story driven games. So a lot of the games that I play right now, they're kind of like they're more like single player or they're multiplayer skill based games like Smash Ultimate, League of Legends, Rocket League, like games like that where they're only as hard as the people you're playing against. So
Right. Well, I mean, it still applies though. When you're playing those games, is your goal just to like screw around and enjoy yourself, or to win and get better and better at the game? Because I still think that like applies as a sort of difficulty. Because I mean, if you're playing Smash like against Sean, like you're obviously like up for the challenge and you like that challenge. And if you didn't, then you'd just be like, hey, I'm just gonna screw around and do whatever. Or the same goes for Rocket League. If like you're just fucking around and having fun, like you're never gonna play anybody that's good at the game, and so you can still like win. But if you're like really like try hardy and trying to get better, like then yeah, you're definitely like looking to get good. And the same goes like League of Legends too.
Yeah.
You could play Warwick in lane if you wanted to, and like sit down and iron and fucking have the time of your life because everybody's garbage and you can like style on them.
My dream.
I'm like somewhere in between that. Like I like to take things seriously, but I don't always like to take things seriously. I mean, I do play a lot of ranked matches, but while I'm like warming up and trying to get into the swing of things, I'll play casual games, and like if I aim to win, and if I don't, it's not a huge deal.
Right.
But then like when I step into a ranked match, I'm really trying to win, and if I don't win, I usually get frustrated. So I try to figure out where my weakness is and see what I can do to do better.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't quite align with like Dark Souls and like Sekiro and like some of those other types of games, just because like the variables are always changing. But yeah, like I don't have time to dive into some of those single player games.
No, I definitely get that.
I do, but I pick and choose where I want to put my time, I guess.
So here's a question that might apply more to you then. How do you feel about hard games of old as opposed to hard games of now? Like you haven't played as many recently, but you know, like if you look back to the games of arcade, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega, you know, like if you're comparing the levels that made you scream back in Sonic, or you know, like random hard
basically
games.
any water level in Sonic.
Yeah, water temple from every Zelda game, or if any of you guys played Ikaruga, which got releases on consoles at different times. Like, how do you compare those games to now? Do you have a preference for one kind of hard over the other?
Well, I grew up on those types of games, so like playing the Ninja Turtles arcade game, like you brought up earlier, and then playing Contra. And like some of those like Zelda 1 and Zelda 2 were just absurd. Like all of the NES games were just like ridiculously hard, and like I think that like to Sean's point, it's because they only had so much space to work with, so
Yeah.
they had to make it difficult to keep you engaged. But like there's very few like old school Nintendo games that I've actually beaten like back in the day, and a lot of them I haven't gone back to try to beat.
You've got that NES classic, man.
I do, and it's hacked, and I've got basically every game that was made for the NES on there.
Yeah, they all fit. It's ridiculous.
But then like when the Super Nintendo came around, like the difficulty scaled down a little bit in my opinion, like save for some of the games that were intentionally difficult. I think that
Battletoads.
yeah, Battletoads is one of those infuriating games, but it's so much fun. I still don't think I don't know that I ever beat Battletoads for SNES.
Yeah,
It's just
I got pretty far in Battle Maniacs, but not that far.
I don't know. It's hard to compare because they're a little bit different. Like I mean, they were difficult just because A, how old I was at the time, and B, like they had space constraints to work with in order to keep somebody engaged to shell out $60 for one of those games.
Mhm.
And nowadays, like the games are punishingly difficult because that's what people want to play.
Right. It's funny because like I think it because games in general aren't as difficult now. Like people talk about these games saying, "Oh, like this is super hard." Like I felt that way about Cuphead when like Cuphead came out. Everybody's like, "It's crazy hard. It's gonna kick your ass." I'm like, "Awesome, cool." Like I thought it just looked really good. The aesthetic of it was amazing, and so I picked it up. Or actually, no, I think I was gifted it by a viewer, and I was like, "Holy shit, thank you!" But you know, I played it, and I loved it, and I really only thought like 2 parts in there where like I struggled. Like,
yeah, I agree.
like I
too.
struggled on the B boss and a little bit on the B and a fair bit on the like roller coaster one, which was earlier than the B. Like I beat those and everything else was like not so bad. It's about just finding a strategy that like works for you and also works like on that, you know, that scene, that boss, whatever they call them. Because there's like levels and then boss levels. But like it wasn't that difficult to get through it, and then with the final boss, I probably got like a little bit lucky, but I beat it in probably like 4 or 5 tries or something like that. But I didn't think it was like that bad because when everybody's like, "Oh man, this game's so hard," I was like, "Okay, like this game's gonna beat the crap out of me, like it's one of those old games, you know, like it's I don't know an old beat 'em up or something." Which I hate those games. I hate beat 'em ups because they're just like they're so designed around eating the shit out of your quarters that I've never enjoyed them.
Well, you just recently played Getting Over It. What
Oh,
is
yeah.
that difficulty compared to Cuphead? Because
I didn't think that was that terrible either, actually. Like,
Okay.
my first run through it, I beat it in just over 7 hours, I think it was. Like, and I think that like the average of like people who beat it is like somewhere around like 7.5, 8 hours or something. So like I was around that average. And there's 1 or 2 spots where yes, you definitely get frustrated, especially like earlier on in it, because there's 2 sections where it's really easy to like send yourself back to the start. And when that happens, like it's frustrating. But like eventually you make it past that segment and then you're like, okay, this is fine. And it's definitely like a little bit of a learning curve. Also like a little bit, not RNG, but like the control is a bit wonky and intentionally so. I mean, the guy who made Getting Over It is, I believe, the same dude who made Quap back in the day. like
Oh, really? I didn't know
yeah,
that.
the idea is like, oh, the controls are kind of fucky, like so it's gonna be hard. But like I liked Getting Over It. I thought, and with that game, the difficulty was well met. I thought with the narration with it, and they combine to make like a really good product. And I think that's important too. If a game's really hard and doesn't have anything else going for it, I don't give a shit about it. Like, because I mean, Cuphead had fantastic visuals. Getting Over It has a cool narration going on. All of the From Software games have like really, really well fleshed out worlds with like super deep lore if you're taking the time to like read all the item descriptions and get into it. Like I haven't played through all the Dark Souls games, but I've read and watched videos like on the lore, and the lore is fantastic. So I think that's great. But then, and that, I guess that kind of plays into why I hate beat 'em ups. Like the lore is, oh no, the mayor's daughter was kidnapped. Hit everyone in the face until you get her back. And it's like, I don't give a shit. Like, why do I care?
But the mayor's daughter, obviously.
Yeah, she's a hottie.
She might hook up with you at the end of the game. Like, I mean, that's what you're going for.
Maybe. I mean, we all know Haggard and Cody they're hooking up together. It's a Bear Twink situation.
I don't know what that reference is to.
I think that's Final Fighter Streets of Rage, one of the two.
So Radiant mentioned a while back, I like some easier games because they have fun mechanics, great aesthetics. I like you already mentioned Mario Odyssey because that just a bunch of random fun mechanics.
Yeah.
That they just threw in there. I also want to bring up Zelda, like Breath of the Wild specifically. The other Zelda games have their own difficulty.
Right.
But Breath of the Wild was generally an easy game to play. Like there's only very few difficult parts of it when you're fighting like the big Minotaur tiger guys. Even like the bosses were pretty easy, but like just walking around doing crazy shit with your bombs and flying off cliffs, climbing up everything, finding stupid unicorns, like those crazy mazes. Spoilers, everybody. But
yeah,
like,
spoilers on a 2-year-old game. You're good.
Yeah. It was generally an easy game to play through, but I didn't like 100% it, but I played a lot through it. I avoided doing the main storylines. I wouldn't do the quests like the four. What are they? What are they called?
The Vine
Beasts.
The beasts. Yeah.
The Beast.
I just avoided
Megazords.
Megazords, basically. I just avoided doing them because I liked having fun going around fucking with the moblins and doing dumb shit, and then those dragons and stuff. Like it was just a great game without having all the difficulty of just a difficult game.
Yeah. I mean, I think definitely like easy games have their place in a lot of ways. Like not only, like a Kirby, a Yoshi, something like that. Like that's something, I have nieces who just recently got a Switch, like their first game console. They got it for Christmas this last year because over Thanksgiving they were playing Mario Kart 8 with me. And it's just like, so my sister's asking like, oh, what are games they'd like? And it's like, or games they could play. So well, obviously Mario Kart, and I love like they have the assists and things like that in there for kids. But I mean, not every game needs to be hard. One, just because otherwise kids can't play games at all. Like, I mean, I think we all have that game that when we were kids, we played it and like it was really hard. And then like 10 years later, for whatever reason, you pulled it out and you played it and you're like, oh my God, I was just terrible at video games.
Every game
showing how young I am. Mario 64. I got an N64 when the GameCube came out because I was one of the video games. But
I got a Super when 64 came out. I feel that.
64, like I was playing Mario 64, and then like 5 years later, 10 years later, we got it again, and it was so easy. I was like, what the fuck was I doing? This is such an easy game. How come I couldn't catch Bowser's dumbass tail? Like,
you didn't have the dexterity that you have now.
Yeah.
Like I think that's 90% of it. It's not that it's any harder. It's just like you've mastered hand-eye coordination a lot better.
Yeah. To be fair, there's also a game or two I've gone back to play and be like, I was way better at this when I was like 12.
Oh yes, for sure.
That was me with Resident Evil 4. I feel like I was just used to bad controls, so it didn't bother me back then.
Yeah. I think some games like are more difficult now just because of the improvements we've had to games in general. So, so to start shifting things a little bit, actually one of the kinds of easy games that I really enjoy are ones that are super narrative deep, and those are often referred to as like walking sims and such now. Like some of my favorite experiences I've had in gaming over the last, 3-4 years, something like that now, would be both Firewatch and What Remains of Edith Finch. Like neither of those games have a challenge at any point. You're just participating in a story, but that story is so well conveyed and well written, both through like just, you know, the voice acting and the pacing and all that, but also like the visual style. Like everything about the narrative of those two games hooked me in. Like I enjoyed the hell out of those. And there's not a single difficult moment. Like you're just playing. You're just enjoying that story. It's not, you know, quite going to a movie because obviously you become a part of the story. And I think that makes the characters in those moments matter more to you than like watching a story, you know, watching a movie. It's more like reading a book where you really do get invested in the characters you're reading about, and I think it even goes a step beyond that because you're generally one of the characters yourself. So, does anybody else have like those kind of games, or are you guys straight like if there's not like gameplay and challenge, it's not my thing? Because I know some people just hate that stuff.
I think everybody has like some games that they enjoy playing, but I'm gonna let Chase talk because I talked last.
I was just gonna say that I tried Firewatch and like I appreciated it for what it was, but I would never go back and like try to play through it again.
Right.
I mean, I saw a lot of hate for it because it was like only a few hour game and like there's no replayability there, and so I saw a lot of people on Steam like requesting refunds for it, and like I don't think it was bad enough to do something like that, but I think that those people they thought that they were getting something other than what they got.
I think that's really important with those kind of games is you're not buying a game at the same kind of value metric as what you're used to. It's not, you know, it's not hours based, it's experience based. You know, because a lot of people are like, oh, if I pay $60 for a game and it's this kind of game, I expect this many hours out of it. And when it is like a solely narrative based game, it's a completely other thing. It's like, okay, you're looking at it more like a movie where, you know, like if you live in a city and you go to a movie, okay, well that's going to be about $15 probably, you know, around that range, $15 for anywhere from an hour and a half to 2.5 hours of your time. So like if this game is 6 hours and costs $30, that's pretty equivalent in my opinion. But it matters if you enjoy that or not.
Yeah, and I would also argue. I mean, they're actually called cinematic experience games. Is the Steam calls them that? I don't know if that's actually what
it seems less derogatory than walking simulator.
I
Yes,
like
it
walking
does.
simulator.
No, yeah. Which makes sense.
It's like FPS compared to pointy shooty games.
I am not a huge fan, but I am a big fan of like story-based games.
Mm-hmm.
Like Skyrim. I mean, like
you were talking about God of War earlier.
Yeah, no, yeah. So like Skyrim, God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, Spider-Man, the new Spider-Man. God,
so many good ones on PlayStation 4.
Yeah, I know, right? Like I didn't even want to buy it. I know, I had to buy a goddamn PlayStation 4. All the stupid ass games that I love. But
2 more GPU generations, I'll emulate that shit.
It's so I like to have that exploration or difficulty or something in between. And I was going to bring up Mass Effect is the main one where it's a little bit older, like not the newest one, but Mass Effect 1 through 3. Like that game, it had its difficulty, but like it was all about the decisions you made and the story that was built behind that. I know a lot of people didn't like the end of Mass Effect 3. I personally did. Screw Andromeda. I got the fucking collector's pack or whatever. Spent way too much money on it because I was such a big fan of Mass Effect. But that story was, to me, was very good. And then always like the Bethesda, at least the Elder Scrolls series has been very good story-wise to me. But I buy them for the gameplay as well, even though if it's not the hardest difficulty or makes the most sense technically, where shit you just teleport over the place and blow shit up. But like, and Horizon was like, I think probably one of the best better than God, one of the best games so far, like that has blended difficulty and story all together very well, where you're better than you can get yourself stronger and better, and you can fight these crazy monsters, and like they're hard to beat. Like if you go fight one of those, you find a T-Rex and you're not expecting them, they kill you pretty much instantly if you don't see them coming.
Yeah.
But if you watch your
But they're
surroundings,
so
and
big. How do you miss them?
you can fucking miss them, first of all. And there's also like the flying ones, pterodactyl
I've never
ones.
played it, so I don't have intimate knowledge of the game.
Those pterodactyl ones can come out of fucking nowhere and just murk your ass. But you can beat them. You can beat them. But it just played in the storyline. It has this tension of you have to play scared, you have to play survival. Like, but it ties directly into the story of how things, the dramatic ending that happens, and how things came through to fruition. God of War does it well too. They do add the meat, the damage sponges for difficulty. But you can, like, I like that they let you, like, they're damage sponges, but then they don't scale with your level, which is another thing we haven't talked about yet, is scaling.
Oh, right.
Scaling enemies. God of War doesn't have scaling enemies. They're always just like set of how hard they are.
They're area specific.
Yeah, area specific enemies. So like you can, like, all right, I got my ass whooped here like a billion times in a row. I left and I got some better weapons and I came back and then I could finally beat these guys, or I played a little better.
Yeah.
So
I think I really like one thing Radiant Reason brought up. Games that have that right mixture of like challenge and engagement. More so the last thing he said, it gets him into the state of flow. And I think that's really where, like, whenever I have a amazing experience that just like makes me feel, you know, like today is tell story and glory, like you feel the glory of like the character and winning. Like there is that with like super hard games, like when you finish Super Meat Boy you're like fuck yeah. But games like I think honestly two of the best examples for me, or I guess more than two now, I just thought of another one. But the early Modern Warfare games, those get like difficult, but you also feel like really like, I mean, it's got obviously the military fantasy and all that stuff, but like there is a sense of glory like as you finish some of those missions, especially towards the end, and like you're overcoming, you know, the corrupt shit that's going on, blah blah. I think Saints Row 2 and especially 3 had awesome moments like that. Like you wouldn't expect to have a game that's as goofy as that, but like Saints Row 3 at the end, it's like, oh, go catch the baddie or like save your friend. And I think most people would go like save Shandy at the end. But like you're like running into like these battles, and like of course I Need a Hero is playing, which just makes everything better. But like you're driving fast from place to place, and like there'll be like a roadblock and you have to fight through it because like your car does not survive those, and then you grab somebody else's fucking car and you go off, and like you get there just in the nick of time because it's timed really well. Like games like that, and having those moments, especially as you near the end, feels so great, and there's lots of flow to it. Yeah, no rushing. And honestly, like Modern Warfare from the start to the end of, I think the first two of those games are so well paced. I honestly, I was like, even though I haven't played a Call of Duty in a while, I was pretty upset when the most recent one didn't have a story mode, because like I finally have a rig where I could play all this stuff again. And I remember even Black Ops 1 story was fantastically paced, and you had this great difficulty still in it. Like those missions weren't necessarily easy. I think the late missions in Modern Warfare 1 and 2 were harder, but they added into the story. I think if they were harder than they were, and like I went through and I played through those missions on, you know, like super hard mode, whatever the top tier was, and when you get one shot by fucking John Elway with a grenade fucking 80 yards away constantly, and it kills the pacing of them. So it's like that balance where you're like playing through the story. Maybe you die once or twice, that's fine, but you're not dying constantly. But at the same time, you're not blowing through it one shot. Who cares? Unless you're like playing really, really well, in which case you feel even more accomplished. That flow that Radiant brought up is just so awesome. Oh, the other one I thought of, I think Halo 2's story is really well paced that way too.
Oh yeah,
because they were talking about Halo there. I think Halo 2, like that difficulty builds up and it doesn't as much have the problem of Halo 1 where it's like, okay, and now run through this same corridor 18 times. You know, library. Everybody remembers library, and it was awful. Halo 2 is not quite as bad in that. I think Halo 3 is pretty good too, but the story's not as good as Halo 2.
I also like to bring up the Halo 3 Legendary. Like, on Halo, all the Halos, even playing on Legendary mode was like, that's how I played all of the games we played on Legendary. And it was me and a friend or something. And they were hard, but it wasn't like impossible. And I tried to play Halo 4 and then again on Halo 5 to play on Legendary, and you couldn't fucking do a thing. Like, you just died to anything. So that's that artificial like difficulty, like beyond like skill, like where you just die to a random grenade that just happened to shoot off. If they throw a grenade and someone else happens to shoot it right in front of your face, so it explodes in the air, you're dead immediately, so you can't react to it. Like,
there's that
NPCs
bullshit difficulty where it's not fair anymore.
Yeah.
Like, your skill doesn't matter at that point, and at that point, like, it's not difficult, it's just assholery.
Yeah.
To be fair, I mean, that is going to Legendary, which is 2 above normal, like, in terms of, like, difficulty levels. So, I mean...
No, I agree with that.
I think that's to be expected. Like, I think that a majority of games that have come out in, like, the last 10 years, they're aimed at being approachable by almost anyone. Like, maybe not anyone can beat them, but for the most part, most people can make their way through it. And then they have the extra difficulties for people that enjoyed it so much that they want to do it again but make it harder. Like, some of the games like Dark Souls and whatnot, like, they're incredibly niche. Like, I don't think that those are the norm.
No.
Like, I don't really go out of my way to be severely punished by a game. Like, a lot of the games that I've played in the past, like Ratchet and Clank and stuff like that, like those types of games, like they're fun, they're good, but they're not necessarily difficult. Like, they're just a fun experience. Even if you like try to ramp up the difficulty, like, they're still not that hard. But yeah, I think that upping the difficulty is like making it harder on purpose, and that's when, if you do that, then like something like Dark Souls and whatnot, like, that's something that you're going to enjoy.
Right. I mean, there's been some dev interview things, like where I've watched, read, etc., where when it talks about the actual difficulty of the game, every game, especially like if it has like good story, like intermixed, the pacing and the feel of the game is based around normal. That's why it's normal. They also tend to focus on making hard feel, like the first tier up, feel really good. And then everything after that is just to like, hey, you know, fuck with the people who go, oh no, I need a like real challenge. It's like, fine, we're going to give you crazy bastards what you want. But yeah, only like normal and the first tier above are generally like actually balanced to like feel like good gameplay. And everything else is meant to be either a super challenge or like for somebody who possibly has like a physical or cognitive disability, or somebody who's younger, or somebody who's just not good at that type of game, or maybe somebody who just wants to enjoy the story and doesn't care about actually like, you know, the physical and mental demands of learning to play the game at that difficulty. So, I mean, that they all have their place, but yeah, you're right, where like when you get into the Legendary on Halo, it's definitely not meant to be fair. But if that was like the base thing of a game, like, you know, the original Ninja Gaiden, you know, all those like NES hard games like that, yeah, that stuff's like all tuned up to that level just because.
Yeah. It's like how with Mega Man in Japan, there was only one difficulty. Like, you didn't have the option to pick normal or hard.
Oh, are there
But
multiple
they-
ones in the US?
Yeah, in the US,
I
they
saw
added
that.
normal to it. Yeah, it was actually the normal of it. Like, the basic one was supposed to be hard. But when it was converted to the US, the early release, like, when they had a chance to play it, nobody could, like, get past the first stage.
Yeah.
So they had to add in the normal difficulty, because in Japan, where it wasn't the first type of game like that, versus the US, when like this was still kind of a new thing and they hadn't got everything all fleshed out yet, they had to add that the normal difficulty to make it to where other people who weren't Japanese could actually play it and get somewhere.
Well, and that's like the actual Super Mario 2, which in the US, like most of us got it on Super Nintendo for in the Mario All-Stars as Lost Levels. That's the actual Mario 2. and they didn't release it in the US or in the West period because they're like, oh, it's too hard for Westerners. So that's why there's Super Mario USA, which is, we know as Super Mario 2. It's completely different. It's Doki Doki Panic or something like that, and it's it's just reskinned with Mario characters. Like, the only reason Birdo exists as a Mario character is because they didn't think Westerners were good enough to play actual Mario, and they reskinned some game, and like that's where Birdo came from. Shit like that.
Yeah. Like, I've always really liked stuff like that, though, because there are some games where I just want to sit back and enjoy a story. Like, I've recently been trying to play through all of the Kingdom Hearts games. I'm taking a break from it right now because I went through 2 of them. I went through 1 and 2, and I watched cinematics for the 2 in between. But
Sean feels bad for you heading into 3. He wasn't a fan.
yeah, I have no idea of anything about it. I've actually been very good at avoiding spoilers. I have no social media right now, so yeah.
If you enjoy it, that's all that matters. So it's all good.
Exactly. But with one thing they do with Kingdom Hearts 2 is the difficulty. They have like the easy, normal, and then they have proud mode, which is harder. But then if you want to go a step beyond that, they have critical mode. And with that one there, you never actually level up. You only get things from bosses. Like after you beat a boss, that's when you get your skills, but you still don't level up. So there are some fights that are completely broken. Like there's one with Marluxia who you have to like not get hit, period, because if you get hit, it's game. But
I see on Steam there's people who have the achievement for beating worlds of Super Meat Boy without dying. I'm just like, the hell? Like, especially some of the later ones. It's like, oh yeah, beat all of Act 6 without dying. I'm like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
Did you see that guy that did all of Dark Souls 1, 2, 3, and Bloodborne without a single hit?
Yeah, I did. I
People
love that
that
guy.
play with like the Donkey
disgusting.
Konga drums and like fucking DDR pads and shit like
Dude,
that.
My
the
favorite
DDR pads get me.
My favorite one of those is somebody who hooked up electrodes into bananas and played as Winston in Overwatch, just like pushing on bananas. That one's amazing. That's all I care about.
Dude, that one is good too. But okay, so with game stories, I have a question.
Yes.
What do you feel about kind of like a show and tell kind of thing versus like playing it yourself and learning through the game?
We need to switch
Oh,
this
like
to ChatterBait instead of Twitch. We can do show and tell.
Like, you mean like watching a Let's Play of a story-based game or what?
Okay, so for me, Horizon Zero Dawn, love the game. I don't really like how the story is kind of like you just get from one point to another and they tell you everything that's going on.
Okay.
And then you just like keep learning about what's going on through like little cutscenes.
Complete
Nothing to do with
exposition-based stories rather than like experiencing the story.
Exactly. Like if you cut out everything that you do in the game, and
I think it definitely
kinda
it
fits
shows
immediately,
how
like,
good
immediately.
your team is at actual world building and experience building. Because yeah, if you're just telling me the story like it's a, Final Fantasy 1 or 2, then I mean, come on, we're not in that era anymore. I shouldn't have to read every piece of dialogue. I should be part of the story that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I totally agree that it takes you out of it when it's like, oh, this is all happening. Weird how I haven't seen any of it.
Yeah. So, while I do agree, God of War does a better job of having the story while you're playing because it has the dialogue with his son and himself, Kratos. But it's like an experience that's happening to her. What's her name? Whatever her name is. Aloy. Like she's just learning everything about this. Everything around her, she's learning about herself. She's not really learning. She's not really learning anything about herself. She's learning about everything that's happened to a previous civilization, and then her. Spoiler alert, clone. Previous she was cloned from. So it's just like a weird. I don't know. I think they did the story very well there.
So I would ask, because I mean I haven't played that game, but from that little thing where she's waking up and learning about the world and everything that previously happened in previous situation, how would you compare it then to Breath of the Wild, where Link's waking up after 100 years, and not only is he learning about what has all happened in the 100 years, but he doesn't remember everything that happened, like, leading up to him going to sleep for 100 years.
I would say it's pretty similar. There's a lot less story. There's no cutscenes there's a few, like 4 or 5 cutscenes in Breath of the Wild. But it is a similar experience where you're not really enjoying. I don't know.
Because I felt fairly connected to the story in Breath of the Wild, not only just because of little things like as you're traveling, like guardians in areas, and you're like, shit, and like as you learn what those are, like you feel involved, but also with the divine beasts as you show up and you get like a cutscene of that past champion, and like as you have to like you meet their families and stuff. I felt very involved in those stories still, even though they had happened 100 years ago.
I do. I think this is a very similar, like it's a very good comparison, Breath of the Wild to Horizon Zero Dawn. Like it was a good game. They did there's a few things where like the political situation in whatever their country or whatever that's called is not well. Like it's not super informed. Like you don't feel
not well
super
defined.
tied to it. Yeah, defined's not the wrong word. Like you don't feel tied to it as well. But you do feel very tied to the backstory of why all this shit's happening. But the political situation that's currently happening is like, fuck, I don't care.
I would say that probably similar to like Just Cause 2 or I think Far Cry 2 or 3, probably 3 I think. Where like, oh yeah, I just fuck around with all the factions. Like it doesn't fucking mean anything to me. Is it like that? Because that totally takes me out of those stories too.
Yeah. You just don't give a fuck about the political factions at all. It's just like they're basically like barbarians. Back in the day, like everyone just and then like there's this underlying backstory that we actually do care about, and they do a very good job on this underlying backstory, but they don't do a good job on the topical backstory.
So here's maybe a bit of a more specific question to people, but same lines as Christians. How do you feel about a game? Like, obviously there are games that just have no story, and that's fine. You know, like, really when you're looking at, say, like, your classic Mario games, like, oh, the princess was captured. Like, it's not a story. It's just like, hey, here's a reason why you're running to the right, you know? You know, things like that. How do you feel about a game that has a great story as compared to no story, but more so compared to a game that has a garbage story? Which I would say something like Just Cause, or not Just Cause. Well, Just Cause 2 kind of has a garbage story. Just came out. It's that Xbox exclusive. Been waiting for it for 14 years. No, Crackdown. Crackdown has one of the most garbage, terrible, worthless stories. I feel like the game would be better if there wasn't one. Personally, like if a story's really bad, I think it detracts from the game as a whole. Like even if the mechanics are fun, like the story's so bad and like the voice acting's bad, it's over the top. I did not like Saints Row 4 because the story was awful. Like I had problems with the gameplay too, but the story was so bad. I'm like, I don't give a shit. Like I checked out. The one where you're like in a computer program the entire time.
Spoiler alert.
No, that's not a spoiler at all. Like you play one mission and then you're in a computer program the whole game.
Spoiler alert?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's hard to compare. I do understand where you're coming from, but it's hard to compare like Just Cause and Saints Row and even Crackdown. And
I can compare Saints Row 4 to Saints Row 2 and 3. Like where in Grand, like I said, I had problems with the mechanics and stuff too in 4, but the fact that 2 and 3 had a good story was great. One story was kind of bad, but it was almost like there was like only sort of a story. And 4 had tried to have a story, and it was awful. And I much preferred... And Saints Row 1 has mechanics issues. I preferred the game that it's like, oh, we kind of have a story. It's mostly, hey, this is a GTA clone. As opposed to 4, where they're like, okay, this is this awesome story. It's like, no, that's terrible. Why'd you even try? Like, that's how I felt about those games anyway.
I'll answer that. Most of the games that I play, they have little to no story unless you like go and read lore on it. Like
Mhm.
League of Legends, I play
Yeah.
copious amounts of League of Legends. You're literally 5 versus 5 plopped down on a map. That's your story. Like
Rocket League, no
there-
story.
Rocket League, no
I
story.
think when it comes to multiplayer, like no story is kind of the standard because otherwise it doesn't make sense anymore.
I've
Like
been playing a whole
Titanfall
bunch
maybe
of
does.
like the Division 2 lately, and there is like kind of an overarching story of you trying to bring DC back from the brink of destruction,
Hmm.
and something like that, like where it's a multiplayer game and the story is there. It might not be the best story ever, but I've played games that have much worse stories than that.
Yeah. So,
Um,
what are some? I mean, if you can remember, like, what are some of the games that you played that just had awful stories, and how did you feel about them? Like, did the bad story ruin the experience for you? Because I felt like that. Like I said, I mean, that was part of why I hated Saints Row 4 was the bad story.
I stopped playing games for a lot of reasons. I don't know if the storyline is ever really it. Like it very well may be. I can't recall a game that I've put down recently because of the storyline being bad versus like I got busy doing something else and I forgot to come back to it.
Yeah, that's usually my reason.
I'm
Chris,
trying to think.
Christian, do you have
On
any
my Switch,
examples?
I can name you like 30 games.
I don't have an example because honestly, I don't know if there's any game. It's hard to remember games that I didn't like versus games that I do. Like, if I'm gonna
Right.
put down a game, not gonna really think about it. Oh, you know what? I lied. Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi. Oh, Ultimate. I think it was like Ultimate Tenkaichi or whatever. When that
Yeah.
first came out, I bought it release day and it was garbage, so I returned it same day.
Yeah, I could see that.
But yeah, but like aside from that one there, where like I just didn't enjoy anything about like the story. Same with Xenoverse. I don't really care too much about like the Dragon Ball Z stories. Like I'm not there to make a new story. I'm there to play a fighting game more
Right.
so. That's
Yeah.
why I like fighters. That's really good.
Like I feel like
But
the old Tomb Raider games. Some of those I enjoyed more or less, based more on the if their story was any good compared to the mechanics of the game. Because like the mechanics were pretty
yeah.
standard all the way through, like PS2, and it was
The
just
only
like
thing I played
and
that
most
game
of the
for
stories
was
were
to swan dive
Yeah.
to my doom.
right, yeah, and most of the stories were like campy to begin with, but some of them were well done overall, and some of them is just I don't even know what the fuck you're trying to do.
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring up Metal Gear Solid, which is a great game.
Very good example.
But like, I have no fucking idea what's going on in the story. Like, there's like crazy shit happening. These weird robots. Like, I don't know what's going on. But I do like sneak around killing people. But
I-
then like,
I thought the first one's story was all right.
I've
Don't
not
think
really
the
played
second
it.
one's is very good.
The first one's the only one that I played, and by the first one I mean the PlayStation.
Yeah,
one.
Metal Gear Solid, the
Okay.
original. Yeah,
I'm
I've
talking
played
about
all of
5.
them.
everything
Well,
before
there's
that's
an
Metal.
NES
Okay,
That's Metal
5.
Gear, not Solid.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
Oh, sorry.
I've okay.
You're gonna
Sorry,
say
go
something
ahead.
about Metal Gear 5, Christian?
I've played them
Solid?
all. Like I absolutely adore the series. It's very good, and I didn't like it at first because for me, I didn't like the fact that if you were to play the game and skip all the cutscenes, you can beat it in like 5 hours. But if you don't skip it, I think you like 3. You can playing normally. It takes like 13 hours to beat it. So it's like literally 8 hours. Like
It's a Kojima game for you.
exactly, and it makes sense because like I understand like his reason for making games was wanting to that cinematic experience.
Yeah.
But I used to hate that. Like it turned me off to the games. Like when I was looking at like people beating the game in 5 hours just by skipping cutscenes.
Yeah.
That just didn't make me want to play the game. But then I actually played it, and I played the first one, and I was like, okay, this is pretty okay, I guess. Then I threw in the second one because I got the Legacy Collection, and I don't know. I think like for me, I was turned off by the story being long,
Okay.
but once I like actually like sat down and played it, I actually had a good time playing all of them.
Yeah, and like those games, Radiant's disagreeing with you. Metal Gear Solid has a good story. Like, for me, it's not that the story is necessarily like too long or like just really bad. It's so convoluted. I mean, it's like It's like towards the end of Harry Potter, where it doesn't actually make sense anymore. They're just saying things to say things. And I see Sean's eyes got a little bit big there. But Harry Potter, it's so great, like through like 3 or 4 books. And then after you get a little bit past that, all of a sudden, if you pay any attention, like you go back and read from the beginning, you're like, well, if they have this thing, why didn't they fucking do this? There's like a dozen things that make no goddamn sense in the Harry Potter universe after you get so far. Because it's just like, oh, at this point, you just like needed a way out of this like corner you wrote yourself into. And it feels like that's what Kojima does over and over. He just like writes shit to write shit. He's like, oh, this will be fucking cool. And then you're like, well, that makes no sense. It's like, nah, it's fucking cool. Don't worry about it.
Yo, it's glowing babies. Let's go. Glowing babies in tar. Let's go.
Yeah, no, for real. Death Stranding, like, you know that shit's gonna make no sense whatsoever. But if the gameplay is good enough, like, it'll be fine.
Okay, honestly, I think like at least with Metal Gear Solid, you just have to play through all of them. Like that's the unfortunate part, I guess. Like you
True.
can't just pick it up and know everything. You have to play through all of it. Same with like Kingdom Hearts. Like that if you play just the mainstream games,
I mean, you could just do Acid and it all makes perfect sense for Kingdom Hearts.
dude, even then it's a questionable experience.
I never even beat the first one. I got to the Tarzan level, I think, and then I was like, done.
Yeah, well, it's like you can't skip one of those games. Like I didn't know it until recently, but if you skip even like if you play all the ones that come out for PlayStation, but then like you miss the one that came out for the Game Boy Advance, like you don't know anything that's going on so far. And
Yeah.
I think like when you have to play through that many games to catch up with a story, it really does turn people off. Because like if you want to play through Metal Gear Solid 5, you can do that, but you're not going to understand anything about what's going on because you've already missed 1 through 4.
When the new Borderlands comes out, it should start with a previously in Borderlands and just like give you a recap.
Yeah, give you a recap. That's what I want to see.
'Cause,
I
like,
want to see like a preview.
That's one of those games that oh, go ahead, Sean. I'll come back.
No, I was I was gonna talk about that. I'm kind of hoping they because they're vault hunters. Even in the first game, they open it up to not just be that planet. Like I'm kind of hoping they just go to somewhere else.
They said something in I can't even remember now, but like in that reveal trailer that made it seem like it is multiple planets. I mean, based off the end of the pre-sequel, or maybe the end of 2. Like made it very obvious that there's lots of vaults on lots of planets. So
Yeah.
no, like I think honestly, like in Borderlands, the first game, the story for it is pretty light. The world building's also not that great either. Like as I've been playing back through it, and I should say the world building isn't great. Like they did a good job of like, okay, there's these companies and they're looking for the vault, and that's like not how it started. It was just like resource mining these planets as like we've expanded as a civilization, blah 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 kind of shit. And that's fine. It's pretty decently established. It's basically Wild West but on a planet. And as you reach the end of that game though, like now that I'm playing back through it again, it's like, well shit, this planet doesn't feel lived in at all. Like you start the game and you end up in Firestone, this town, and there's like nobody in it at all. There's Dr. Zed is there and literally no one else. And then there's like little bandit camps around, but those don't even feel lived in. And I'm already like remembering Borderlands 2. Like obviously you have Sanctuary and there's all these shops and there's Moxie's, bar and all that stuff. And like even the bandit areas that you end up in like feel like small little towns that are like lived in. And so like that helps the story, of course. But yeah, like 2 and pre-sequel like built that world out so far that if 3 like fails on the story front, people are going to be really disappointed. And I think that's kind of a dangerous thing with having a good story, is that if the next iteration doesn't have a good story, people are going to be...
Mass Effect.
Yeah, right. Because Mass Effect Andromeda and people got really mad at the end of 3, right? We're like, oh, you spent all this time building out this like awesome complex story. At the end, it's like, oh, here's a 3-part decision that is basically like everything you did up to this point didn't matter at all.
I'm calling it now. If Borderlands 3 story sucks, they're gonna have it turn into a battle royale mode a month in.
They already
Guaranteed.
said there's no battle royale.
God damn it!
Yeah.
I haven't seen a single preview or
Yeah.
read anything.
No, so, I don't know
about
if
it.
somebody like tweeted Randy Pitchford or what, but he said there's no battle royale mode.
Well, that's a first and awesome.
Yeah, which I'm happy about. I mean, like battle royale has its place. I see how it fits into a game like like all your general army shooters. Like if you're talking Battlefield, Call of Duty, I get how battle royale modes fit into those. But you like tell me, oh, Borderlands, it's like no, that doesn't make any sense at all. Like if you have like instanced like dungeon runs kind of thing, like in Diablo 3, something like that with like randomly generated dungeons, like that could be vault runs or whatever in Borderlands. Like something like that would make sense. But battle royale and honestly versus modes in Borderlands make almost no sense at all to me personally.
No, I agree, but I'm just saying, bet it happens if it does poorly.
Nah.
I would not say a battle royale, but I would say hero shooter,
Ooh.
like Overwatch.
I could see a hero shooter happening. Yeah. Like
Isn't that,
I think they would do that as a
that's
side
what
game.
I meant. Like
No, Overwatch style. That's not battle royale.
No, PvP, but
Yeah.
still. Like
That would be
Overwatch
that
style.
would be the one PvP mode that would kind of make sense, but they would have to do as like a side project. Which, to be fair, they did that already with Battleborn. Unfortunately, it came out as the same. Although it was like MOBA styled hero shooter, and it came out at the same time as Overwatch and completely ate shit.
I think if it happened, if it would have waited or they came out earlier, they would. The game's fun. I don't know if anyone's played it, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, if it came out before Overwatch, like before that the open beta happened, I think they probably would have succeeded. At least for
Or
a
if they-
while.
Or if they even held on to it for like a year or two and just.
Oh,
Like,
they
didn't
did?
release it.
Oh, you mean didn't release it until later?
Yeah.
Yeah, that might have succeeded too. It was just like, the launch window of a game matters so damn much.
You can't fight with Blizzard.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, the same shit happened to Paragon, where it wasn't a terrible game, but the launch window was just unfortunate. I know
Oh,
that pulls at your heartstrings.
Paragon's one of my favorite game. My favorite MOBA. I'm not a MOBA fan, but that was my favorite MOBA, and it got shit on. Whatever. Go back to the topic at hand.
Yeah. No, I think the story for certain games matters so much more than others, because I think if I get a Borderlands game that doesn't have good writing, like especially after Borderlands 2, which had some of the best writing that we've seen in games around that time period. It was probably the best writing in a game like that year, between characters like Tiny Tina and such. Like everybody just like you grabbed onto Tiny Tina and Claptrap, of course. Like there's so many characters from that series you talk about. Moxie, even DLC characters like Mr. Torg, that people love and they're quotable and the world makes sense at least on some level. It's not like crazy out there. And so I think if that series releases a game that has crap writing, that it hurts it way more than some other game. Like when Crackdown comes out, if it's bad writing, you're like, well, yeah, it's Crackdown. Like if they had good writing, I'd be shocked.
Yeah, it's just some dude yelling.
Yeah. It's Terry Crews jumping around and grabbing agility orbs. That's what that game is.
Terry Crews getting mad.
Yeah.
It's Brooklyn Nine-Nine in space, kind of.
Oh.
So good.
I don't know who would have the rights to that, but make it. Just make Brooklyn Nine-Nine the game.
Amen.
And then when you like really have the DLC at the end of the year, instead of Game of the Year edition, it's just Toy edition.
Nice.
Noise.
There you go.
The title of your
Toy.
sex tape edition.
That's a good
one.
It'd be Toy edition. Title of your sex tape.
That's a winner right there.
There we go.
Agreed.
I'm glad we came together to make the best title possible.
Exactly.
I'm glad we came together. Title of your sex tape.
That was good.
All right. So let's do a quick wrap up here then. Any last thoughts on either difficulty, storyline, games you're looking forward to, games you're playing right now, some of the best games of the past, like storyline, difficulty, all that stuff.
I just picked up Sekiro. I'm gonna try to give that the old college try and see if I can get farther than the first boss.
So it's gonna take you 8 years to do what people did in 2.
Probably, yes. And I also picked up the Final Fantasy VII
Nice.
Switch release. So
How many times have you bought that game?
I've bought it 3 times, I guess. I got it on Steam. I don't know if I bought it or oh god.
Go ahead.
All these no, sorry, I was like seeing all these auto modded
Yep, nope,
things.
don't worry about it.
I 3 times. I bought it once on the PlayStation, like back when it originally came out. I bought it on Steam at some point. Either that or it just showed up in my library, and then I bought it again on the Switch.
Nice. I mean, for me, obviously, I'm looking to see what we get out of Borderlands as we find out some more. I mean, that won't be out for a while, but the story's going to matter a lot of that to me. And honestly, a little bit story and difficulty, just small bits of each, actually. Luigi's Mansion 3, which is coming out sometime this year. That game, if it's too easy, I won't enjoy myself. And the story just has to have like a little bit there and have that quirk, good like the original. If those aren't there for me, that's, I don't know, it's just going to be disappointing. But like on the hard end of games, definitely like Sekiro if I pick it up. Honestly, I just need to play through all the From Software games. So that's where I'm sitting right now on difficult games. And honestly, there's a handful of NES and Super Nintendo games that I need to play back through on the classic consoles and just fight through the difficulty.
Currently, since I just got the online thing for the Switch, I've been playing a lot of the classic there. So I want to play through Ninja Gaiden because I've never done that. Never played those games before, like on the NES. So I'm excited that I actually get a chance to give those a try because that was a little before my time. I played Super Nintendo, but that was kind of like the furthest back I ever went. So it's nice to be able to play all these older ones also.
Yeah.
And Sekiro, that's the game that I'm most looking forward to, considering I have like every FromSoft game on every possible console I can. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Before Sean goes, I do remember there's one I've been playing through recently, the Hitman 2016, and I'm tempted to grab Hitman 2. Those are interesting because like you can make them like the default is easy where like you just overhear something and it walks you through like the path, but you turn that off right away and then it does have this difficulty of like not getting caught in the replay back and forth. I love that. And the stories are like super vague and they're just like, it's here to like make this area make sense. So I'm really enjoying Hitman and the difficulty there. Sean?
I mean, I am playing through Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which very much surprised me how good it is. It is a kind of open world, easier game, so if you want something to relax to. I am going to buy Sekiro in a little while after I probably finish Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I do love From Software's games. Games I'm looking forward to, definitely Borderlands. Maybe we'll play it as a let's play on this channel, maybe.
We do need to do some let's plays on here.
Yeah,
we'll do some couch co-op shit.
Yeah.
Once the Twitch squads happen, we'll have to 3-man stream.
Don't count on that because it's only partners right now, so it'll probably be forever.
Okay. Well,
it'll be couch co-op stuff, which is fine too.
Can't couch co-op Borderlands. You need.
Yeah, you can.
Can you?
It's always been 2-player split screen, and the updates they're putting out, for at least for the original, makes it 4-player.
Sounds like a nightmare.
But we can play other games, so we'll be fine.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just looking forward to games this year. There's a lot of up in the airs that might come out. Some Bethesda games and things like that. But yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for your time. Thanks for joining us here on Yeti Set Go. For everyone viewing, thanks for your input as well. Definitely appreciate it. So everyone, Thanks for coming, and we'll see you on the next episode of Yay Set Go. Bye.
Bye.